Washington's clear-thinking headquarters. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
7:07 on the Morning Majority, Thursday morning in D.C. Brian Eamon, Mary Catherine Ham from the Daily Caller. Thanks for coming back.
Glad to be here.
We've got Senator Jim Inhofe coming up about an hour from now. We'll talk to him at 8:06. And Stuart Varney from the Fox Business Channel coming up about a half hour from now at 7:36. If there is a government shutdown, what impact would it really have on the economy? It's one of the questions we'll ask Stuart coming up. But right now, Congressman Thad Mccotter, Republican from Michigan, joins us on the program. Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. What is your sense? Do you think we're going to have a shutdown? What's the latest? What are you hearing?
Well, I'm hearing the same thing everybody is. We've heard the same thing for quite some time. And Speaker Boehner has made it clear that he does not want to shut down the government. And we've had mixed messages from the Senate Democrats. We're right where we've been as the negotiations go on. But as simply as I possibly can do it, the Democrats are willing to shut down the government for more spending, deficits, and debt, and Republicans want to keep it open and spend less and lower deficits and debt.
Did you hear anything about what was discussed at the White House meeting last night with Speaker Boehner?
No.
Nothing. So they keep you out of the loop and all that. That's all those decisions. Help me with the process of how it works for just a regular member of the Republican Party. So essentially, the leadership meets, they do their thing, and then you guys are briefed on it. Later down the road. How does that work?
No, we had a conference yesterday. I think it was very productive. We talked about what we would do in the event of the continued intransigence of the Senate for more spending, which the public rejects. We are prepared to vote on a continuing resolution that will go for 7 days. It'll fully fund the military, and it will cut $12 billion from the budget. And so when we look at this, what we're sitting in is a conference, and the leadership will lay out the strategy, and the negotiations will be very tightly held, and we are prepared at this point in time to go forward with our continuing resolution as it was put in Monday, or we are prepared to deal with and evaluate and judge whatever may come out of the negotiations.
Well, now, you've said in the past that a majority of the public probably wouldn't notice or mind a government shutdown. What's your sense of, that's what it comes down to? We have this big media uproar about that there's a shutdown and who takes the blame, and that becomes the big question.
Well, one of the reasons I love the media, it was a clipped quote. It was reciting Rasmussen's polling, which showed that 57% of Americans would not mind a government shutdown if it led to deeper spending cuts.
All right.
So that
makes more sense.
Yeah, it was premised on the outcome of what would happen, not to shut it down simply for shutting it down, which I also, Mary Catherine, had pointed out, that Americans would rather see the government function and come to an agreement with the deep spending cuts that are necessary to at least start us back on the path of fiscal sanity.
Well, and my question is, do you think that Republicans can effectively communicate why they came to this point to begin with? I mean, I think the Democrats not passing a budget is sort of getting lost in this whole discussion.
Well, I think it's part of the problem is that we're still dealing with what they didn't do when they controlled everything.
Right.
And the president, this is a party that couldn't pass a budget. And couldn't finish appropriation bills, so we're cleaning up a mess that was left for us. We as Republicans are trying to deal with it and do what we were elected to do, originate a spending bill, put forward the reductions in spending that we ran on, and yet you're still hearing people talking about as if the election hadn't happened, as if the voters hadn't made their decision, as if somehow the Republicans are just magically wound up in a majority in the House, gained seats in the Senate, and that's not the case. The public is the sovereign citizens are the ones who knew that we could not continue on the massive expenditures and intrusions that the Democratic majority had foisted upon the American public, and that they wanted to change direction before we went off the cliff.
All right. Republicans passed a bill, obviously, for $61 billion worth of cuts. And so try to help me work this out. We're watching this happen. We're talking about billions of dollars that we're fighting over. And, maybe the difference is $7 billion between Democrats and Republicans right now. I don't know. Maybe it's $20 billion, whatever it is. It's billions. But in reality, we've got to cut trillions of dollars, and we saw that in Paul Ryan's budget in 2012. So do you think I guess the question is a shutdown really worth it when we're talking about billions, a couple of $1 billion, when we really need trillions of dollars worth of cuts?
Well, there's three things. First, if it's such an insignificant amount, I trust the Democrats in the Senate and the President will heed the public's will for less spending and concede it, keep the government open, and have less spending. Secondly, when we talk about it, this was a promise the Republican Party had made. We had put forward a responsible piece of legislation, sent it to them, and in their determination, it wasn't fit for them, and they wanted less. They wanted more spending, and that's not what the public voted for. It's a test of whether Republicans are going to govern. Thirdly, Paul's work is a resolution, This will actually save money.
Right.
Paul's work, if we can't do this, how are you going to go forward and do anything within Mr. Ryan's budget?
Well, okay, and then I also hear from the Democrats that, listen, the Republicans control one branch of government right now, or one section, which is the House. The Democrats still control the Senate, and they control the White House as well. Republicans are going to have to compromise.
As Lincoln said, important principles must remain inflexible. The fiscal insanity that we saw to the Democratic Party, the reckless and irresponsible spending that they engaged in, was never questioned. I never saw people talk about, well, you know, if these are reckless spending cuts that the GOP is proposing, excuse me, where were you when they were doing reckless spending that put us in this position in the first place? And again, as I point out, this is not an argument between Republicans and Democrats. It's an argument between Democrats and the American people who elected those Republicans to govern in the House and elected the majority of candidates running for Senate last year.
Well, yeah, and I think the question going forward is how well conservatives are able to communicate that to the American public and to continue to keep them, especially independents, on that side of the equation.
Yeah, we can't continue to bury our prosperity beneath big government. And if you're going to start to allow capital to form, people to get back on their feet, the economy to start moving again, you got to realize that the government stimulus wasn't what was going to work. It hasn't worked. The American people understand that. They understand that the longer the government continues to crowd out private investment and to take the life's blood out of the economy to fund its unsustainable spending, the longer it's going to take to have a real recovery, the longer it's going to take for jobs to start actually being created, for wages to start coming up. Because the more employers have to pay to government to keep that thing going, the less they're going to have to hire people to increase their standard of living through higher wages. So this budget fight, while it's only about billions, is about setting us back on the path to allow for prosperity, for allowing the entrepreneurial genius of American workers and American business owners to actually keep us number one and to get us back out of this economic recession.
Is it possible, if you look at the math about the CR at least, that a compromise could be worked out where Speaker Boehner goes along with essentially where he has more Democrats voting with him than he does Republicans voting with him?
Well, when people ask me to do that with Speaker Boehner, I don't do that. Speaker Boehner has been his entire time here a pillar of fiscal conservatism. And when he got elected Speaker, as he said when he was Minority Leader, he believes that the will of the House must prevail, and he's always said that is not the will of the majority party or the minority party. It's the will of all the members making their own determinations. And I think that whatever Speaker Boehner does, he's going to think it's in the best interest of the country, the best interest of the institution, and he'll ask members on both sides of the aisle to make their mind up.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Congressman. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Congressman Thad Mccotter, a Republican from Michigan, here on the Morning Majority. All right, your take on it. It does seem that is a real possibility, actually, that Boehner has more votes from the Democrats than he does from Republicans, or at least it's pretty close, or you might have more Republicans voting against it and in order to make a deal. But how important is it to make a deal right now for you? And, how big of an impact would the government shut